What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. A couple of weeks ago, I got in a book that I've been waiting for a while, Frontier Scum. Now, I'm a big fan of the Western genre in general, and especially Western RPGs.
That's just my game.
So whenever I heard about Frontier Scum a year ago, I was super excited to get a copy of that game. Unfortunately, it was out of print by the time I found out, and this was the first time that we got a reprint. Don't be in the same boat I was in. Get your copy today. But if you want to hear more about it so that you can be sure that it's right for you, let's go take a look at this awesome acid western game. Right up front, I know this game is a treat by the inspired by sections. The RPG inspiration is Mort Borg, and the movie inspirations include Bone Tomahawk, The Revenant, and The Quick and the Dead. I think those are very fairly represented here in this game. It certainly does resemble the Mort Borg system in both its mechanics and its style, but to call it a Mort Borg clone would really sell this beauty short. To start with, the physical construction of this book is nothing short of breathtaking. It has the artistic and layout style of Mort Borg, but it also has a great gimmick in the cover, with it feeling like an Old West artifact. The spine is exposed and the paper has a weight to it that is unusual for a game book. Throughout the book, it is written very much in the style of a late 19th century mail order catalog, mixed with some sections that are clearly a spoof of an equally old local newspaper. The rules and fluff are all cleverly hidden within this format. Now, I say hidden, but once you see what they are going for, it is pretty clear how everything works, and that alone is an impressive feat. The system itself, like Mort Borg, is a D20 target number system, with virtually every task coming down to a D20 roll, plus an ability modifier, between -3 and +3 initially, against a difficulty rating, or DR. The system is beautifully simplified, with only 4 ability scores calculated at creation by a roll of a D4 minus a D4, hence the numbers ranging between -3 and +3. Ability scores aren't the only numbers that are small either, as the character's hit points will be a D6 plus grit score with a minimum of 1. Grit is the ability score that covers feats of strength and toughness. Slick covers hand-eye coordination and feats of dexterity. Wits covers intelligence, while luck covers the rest, including gambling and whom fate chooses to pick on. Characters in Frontier Scum don't have levels, and there is not much in the way of a traditional RPG leveling. However, they can gain extra skills by rolling a natural 20. They can also gain extra hit points by surviving brushes with death, but the chances are very low and the threat very real. That isn't to say that the players will have to roll a new character every time that they get into a scuffle, though, because they don't necessarily die at 0 hit points. They very likely won't even be knocked out. This is one of the areas where you have to throw your RPG assumptions out the window, as the mechanic threw me for a loop on the first read. At 0 hit points, the character makes a drop check for non-lethal damage, which is based upon your current hit points, which can go negative, and a roll. Roll well, you're still up in the fight, but you do move a little slower. Roll poorly, and you're knocked unconscious. With lethal damage, things get a little more dire. At 0 hit points, you roll a flat D20, and a 1 to 5 will have you dying, either now or soon enough.
Dying ain't much of a living.
But the higher the roll, the better off your circumstances become. With such low hit points and dire consequences, what is there to keep the characters on the right side of the dirt, you might ask? Well, for one, you have your trusty hat, which can be sacrificed to cancel all damage from a single attack, though it must be declared before the damage is rolled, and there is a good chance that the hat may not survive. Another thing that is working in favor of the players are aces, represented by a playing card, which allow a single reroll with their use, though not on 20s or 1s. Since all rolls are player-facing, if you fail to dodge the attack, you could spend the single ace you started the session with, or the one that you gained during the session, to get another hack at it. Of course, there is the caveat that gunshots will just hit without a chance to dodge. Well, kind of anyways. As presented in the book, it is easy to read the text and come away with, well, I guess guns just hit automatically, roll damage. In ideal situations for the shooter, this is in fact true.
That's a fact.
However, if it is deemed a tough shot by the GM, then the player can roll to dodge, or rather, see how lucky he is, as the roll will be using the luck stat. If the player is the one doing the shooting, the roll will be based upon his slick ability if it is deemed a tough shot. It makes guns very deadly and threatening, but also encourages players to be pleading their cases to the GM to make shots against them tough shots. Melee combat is also different from most of the Morkborg clones that I have looked at, with things progressing much more quickly than a traditional melee. Each melee exchange will have one participant hitting for damage. Players roll grit even if trying to use a gun in melee, and on a success, they obviously hit. Where it gets interesting is that on a failure, they are hit by their opponents. So damage will be dealt on each round. It is only a matter of whom will be taking said damage. I love this way of handling melee as it speeds things up and avoids never-ending pillow fights. You would be forgiven if you thought such a simple system without much in the way of a traditional advancement might have an equally simplistic character generation process. But happily, you'd be wrong. The Frontier Scum character generation is every bit as weird, detailed, and interesting as the other Morkborg-based systems that I've played. Besides your stats, you randomly generate a background, your wanted status, a stolen horse, your special hat, and a set of skills that aren't defined by their usefulness, but rather how you acquired them. For example, if you were a gambler and a cheat, you might have to create a skill you gained from a time you were thrown from a balcony. Maybe that skill is being able to tumble and avoid falling damage, or maybe more interestingly, you broke your collarbone and now you can easily dislocate it, and escaping binding is more easy. At any rate, skills are handled with the same elegance as the rest of the game, with them boiling down to advantage on rolls in which they are applicable. The package doesn't stop with a clean game and a great layout either. It includes a full house of tables and mechanics to randomly generate content for everything from hunting to carousing, bounty hunting, and finding odd jobs. When I was building my Frontier Scum solo kit, I struggled to choose what tables would be vital and reusable, and I ended up printing most of them. Luckily, what I used in ink there, I made up for with the ingenious Beastiary. In 2 pages, close but not adjacent in the book, I was able to print the stats for 20 animals and 21 human enemies. It has all the staples of the Western genre, from coyotes, snakes, and bears to the downright exotic choices of saber-toothed cats and mammoths. One thing that you won't find in the Beastiary is the truly weird. No zombies, vampires, or Cthulhu tentacle beasts in these pages. This is not, after all, exactly the Weird West. This is the Acid West, and as such, it is more about the seedy characters and the survival aspects of Western, not the fantastical elements common to the Weird West. That is until you get into the included adventure, which does have some very unusual inclusions indeed. I won't spoil it here, but suffice it to say, I don't think that the included elements came from the history books. If you were disappointed that the game didn't focus more on the Weird West elements, take heart, because the stat blocks are simple, and it is very easy to weirdify existing enemies for an enterprising GM. They just aren't the focal point of this particular game. Heck, if you wanted to, you could even port over some of your favorite beasties from your other favorite Morkborg clones. Though the hit points might want to be toned down unless you are just wanting to have some very formidable foes to face. Flavor to your own taste here is what I'd say. I mentioned the included adventure, which is called the Oregon Rail, and yes, it is a fine use of wordplay there. But I have not yet mentioned something that was included as a digital download with my pre-order of the red ink copy of Frontier Scum. That being the Tides of Rot Splattercrawl campaign. I haven't fully devoured this little gem just yet, but in the PDF it is 8 pages set up as a newspaper, built to house an entire city crawl campaign. Also included was a separate file with what looks to be the album cover, because of course Tides of Rot was also a studio album of game-appropriate music, which doubles as a GM screen. Not to leave any stone unturned, I was also given the MP3 files for the Tides of Rot album, and they are actually something I would be happy to play during my game, on par with the old Shadows of Brimstone CDs if you've ever given them a listen. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of Mr. Druid's work here.
If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up.
I think it is a great adaptation of a system where it not only successfully converts the game to a new genre, but it also actually improves upon the original work in many ways. I need to revisit Pirate Borg again to make a final decision.
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But this is definitely in the running for my favorite version of Mork Borg. If there are still some copies of the physical book left in stock, get them while they're available, as I had to wait almost a year after I heard about this game before I could get my grubby little hands on one. I scoured the secondary market and never once came across a used copy in the intervening months, but I am glad I waited, because the red ink edition is beautiful and the free Tides of Rot album and campaign were a real nice surprise. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.